What is going on, everybody? It's and we're back again with another. I think this is a shock one. I did not expect another ban and update list for Elestrals, and it's around Void, and it's almost an hour. So we got to get into this. I have no idea what's going on here.
Hello, casters, and welcome. This is a bit of a different video than we normally do, but we're here to give.
Dan looks so enthused here. Like Dan has that look on his face that he doesn't want to have to make this video, but here we are.
Give you an update on the Tartarus ban restricted list and the Elestrals card game.
And I don't know who this other guy is.
I'm Ben, but you probably know me as Ridiculous Hat. That is my online brand.
Okay.
And also who I am in the Discord as the community director for Elestrals. We're here to tell you how we're banning cards, what we're doing, how we're limiting stuff, all the changes we're making. And I'm here with a very special co-host. You may know him, Dan A Drive. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm actually doing really good. I'm excited about this new format. I think this podcast style video is going to allow us to,
I don't know, doing an hour worth. I don't know, just getting it in and out. But again, we just had a ban and update list, what, 2.5 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? And here we are now. Yeah, well, okay, probably, I think it was the 10th actually. It's been a month, and we're already doing another ban and restricted. I figured we weren't going to get another one until Sunstrike came out, and we had that for a couple weeks. Here we are now.
to get into a little bit more of the nuance and you know, kind of go into a little bit more of not only why we're making decisions, but how we got to those decisions. And I think it's going to kind of be a new step for Elestrals in terms of the dialogue that we have with our community. And I'm super excited to chat because it's fun. We've done this a few times now. We've had a lot of chats over the last few days, and we're going to do a lot of recapping of the things that we found and the conclusions that we made. So I appreciate everyone's time today and watching this, and I look forward to a really healthy discussion as we move forward.
Yeah, we've been trying this out, and really the whole team has been hard at work at figuring out how we can make sure that we turn Elestrals into the best game that it can be. Now, we should probably address, hey Dan, what are we doing, and why are we doing it now? Because we just had a ban list update, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, sometime in December, I don't remember when, but it was not that long ago. We released Void, and now we're here with another update with a whole lot of stuff to talk about. Walk us through how we got here and why we're making this change.
Yeah, so when we launched the live stream format, we saw a lot of developments that were really positive for the game. Game plan decks becoming a focus, some really cool combo strategies, and as always, we're listening to feedback and monitoring results to kind of keep things more in line, shake things up from time to time, and ultimately try to deliver the best gameplay experience. And when we approach,
which should be the target for any TCG out there, you should look for the best format that you have.
This most recent list of releasing Void back from Tartarus, we thought we were actually doing a good thing to create more diversity in the game, but ultimately it seems we missed the mark there. And you know, like I said, our goal is always to.
I don't understand why you would bring Tartarus back. Void back. You already made an Escape from Tartarus card. That should mean that the original Void does not come back. You don't need it. You already made a card that fixes the issue that you had with Void, so why bring it back in the first place?
Take in community feedback and try to make the best game we can. And after taking in player sentiment and seeing some games take place, it seems as though we missed the mark a bit in terms of how we wanted to turn Livestream into a better format for people. And I think one of the conclusions that we made in our discussions coming out of the reactions of our most recent ban list was like, we're so close. We really feel like all the tools are there. So how can we kind of take another stab at this?
The issue you're going to have with ban and limiting lists and stuff like this is you're never going to make everybody happy. There are going to be cards that you're going to limit or ban that somebody's going to go, and there's going to be people who are not going to be happy that they were banned or limited. No matter what, you cannot 100% satisfy your player base with these bans and limit lists.
And really optimize a little bit better to give you guys a better and more fun game that I think aligns with the expectations of Elestrals players. So that was kind of the heart of it. You know, our intentions were always good, of course, and we did test and make conclusions based on that, but it seems as though we missed the mark a little bit on a few areas.
Your testing must be really bad then, because if you're going out there and you're testing and you're like, oh, this seems to be fine, you must not be going and getting every scenario possible to make sure that this actually works. Because then you come here 2.5 weeks later and boom, you're stuck with this.
Yeah, we are committed, of course, to trying our best and making sure that we don't shy away from taking risks, but unfortunately, looking back at the results of the last ban list, some risks are just a little bit too much. We had some very soft nerfs to decks, some soft limits, but some pretty heavy unlimits that ended up distorting the picture of the format. We ended up underestimating exactly how Like a Void would warp game plans, and generally speaking, we did say that we were happy with Livestream being a faster format, but we aren't this okay with it. It's a little bit too fast. The game is a little too much on a knife's edge, where a lot of the question is that turn 1, turn 2, do you have the Gorgons? Do you have the answer? Do you hit the threat? And it's a little bit too short of a window for players to feel like all the cards they play matter. And it ends.
I honestly don't think you'll ever hit a perfect format to where every card in a deck is going to matter. It's going to be very difficult. It also depends on who's playing the cards, too. Or what it comes down to.
Up keeping the format from allowing the really cool live stream game plans we created to exist, especially after there were some in the previous ban list that we were attempting to address that often got stronger by taking out the limited cards and putting in Like a Voids. So, and I do want to emphasize, if you enjoyed the Like a Void format, if you enjoyed playing it, you're not wrong for feeling that way, but we ended up hearing negativity from folks we don't normally hear from at all. It was more pushback, more concerted, more universal, of people saying, this isn't quite what I signed up for. It's not always just about balance. Even though Like a Void didn't win the last event, we heard from players they were having trouble having as much fun.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of really key points there. And one thing that I just want to take and kind of mention is, like, never is Elestral sitting here and just going to listen to the loudest voices that are just angry, right? We have to look at the whole picture here. And I think it's important to also recognize that it's a very challenging task to deliver a list that is going to meet everyone's expectations. In fact, that's almost unreasonable, considering everyone plays the game a little bit differently. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone has a different context of how Elestral should play. So we can define what we want that to look like within the confines of the game environment and what people are generally asking for, and look to deliver on that objective as well. And it seems as though we kind of diverted a little bit too much from that. And it actually is interesting for me, and I wanted to share this. You know, I do a lot of playing myself, but it's usually in the future, right? I'm playing 2, sometimes 3 sets ahead, so my perspective is always a little bit different than other people's, but it's useful to help us make those decisions. And I find myself enjoying Elestrals more now than ever. Again, I'm 2 sets in the future, but I was trying to reflect on what about that I enjoyed, and it's definitely the game plan, right? The game plan focus is huge. There's much more focus on that, less focus on splashability, and more diversity in deck building. Those are things that I really value. But you know, when I reflect on Livestream, I had, you know, said that I really enjoy the speed, that we have this uptick in speed, and that games are you know, being more fluid. You're able to do the thing that your deck wants to do. But I think I almost mistook my own experience in a little bit of a way as appreciating the game plans and the strategy more than the speed. So I think
that's going to be a big issue also, is the fact that he's playing 2, 3, he's 2 sets ahead. One set, what, 6? And he's on set 8. He's doing games, he's testing set 8, 7, and 8. Him trying to, he's looking at the cards from live stream and going, how do they work with cards later and how well they work together, while we have none of that. It definitely hurts it when it comes to trying to make the game work now, while also knows how the game works in the future, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, a year from now.
You're going to see from our list today is us dialing back a little bit. I think some of the cards currently in the game just allow for things to move a little too fast, and I think that's taking away some of what makes Elestrals. And the thing I want to highlight on that is the spirits themselves. That is what makes Elestrals, is the fact that you have this super unique resource system, and I think that we've almost taken a step away from the purpose of the resource system by making those spirits not even matter, because some of these cards like cheat the system a little too much, or make their thing happen so fast that there's no downside to doing that, and then your opponent is
You're the one who makes the effects, dude, so you should definitely do better at making effects so this doesn't happen as often.
Such a back foot, and they're not able to respond. So you know, those are some of the philosophical points that I wanted to address, and that, you know, while I love the speed at which Livestream is, I think really what I love the most is the game plan focus and the diversity in what players can choose to use. And I think by dialing back a little bit on that speed, we're going to see kind of those decks come to fruition in a more fun way and allow more back and forth, which is what Elestrals really should be about, is the spirit management, that tug of war, that push and pull. And I'm very excited to see what comes from this new list for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it, as making sure that we have a high-level goal of spirits mattering again. And so we're keeping the game plans, but we're not trying to go back to a good stuff meta. Some of you more entrenched players may know this is fives. We're not trying to make it so you just play the most efficient cards on rate, and that is the entire game plan.
Which is going to be a thing all the time. No matter how much you try to not make it about fives, it's always going to be about fives eventually. Come on.
But we want to make sure that we have clear goals going into this that we share with you so that you understand the logic behind every hit. This is an emergency speed ban list, so we have to make sure that we're intentional about the messages we send and about the changes we make. And we have two things that really stand out to us in the current format that are overrepresented. There are hyper-efficient threats, and there are cards that either create, compound, or both repetitive game states. If we end up having really fast ascensions, especially twos, that come out quickly, stay in play due to being well protected, or they just come back over and over again, that's a tougher game to enjoy. So we looked very closely, and we worked with our testing team, we worked with internal design stakeholders, we worked with other cross-functional teams to make sure that we were fully understanding the impact of what we were doing, why we were doing it, and that our logic made sense.
Everything to watch.
Now, future ban lists hopefully won't be this large and won't be this fast. But hey, we're here to do whatever makes the most sense for the community.
No, that means like that.
That's the important part.
Yeah, I want to say too, this has been a great learning experience for us. I want to highlight, because the emergency nature of this.
Fully banned cards in the past, that changes today.
Ooh, baby.
We have 8 bans. We have 8 bans on this list. So when we're talking about a ban, we're talking about a card that we don't think is healthy for Elestrals in any amount. We have some cards in this list that we tested at 1, and it felt really impactful when you got lucky and saw the card early, or it was still really impactful if you went and looked for it with a searcher. So if a card stands out, either if you get it early, or if you get it late, or if you get lucky in the middle of the game and hit it, that tells us that maybe this card just isn't the healthiest thing for Elestrals to be built around. There are also some hits on this list in particular that are focused on design sensibilities. They may not be power outliers in the way that you expect, but they may just contribute to a part of the game that we want to de-emphasize, and we'll make sure to explain that to you.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think you covered a lot of those things, and the thing I want to emphasize that we talked about.
That's not what I wanted to say when it does. I would like to just get to the bans. We don't need to have this whole
explore, escape. So we'll just be
a lot about taking your time and being thorough, and where this tend to be cards that even if you single principles,
could do some
right on the head there, and that's something I'm really excited about. We've kind of heard players' thoughts on semi-limits in the past.
Okay, if they're going to do this next time with the next ban list, give us the short phone video, and then do this if you want to after, explaining why you're doing all of this. Don't just go, let's just do a podcast thing. Do both. Have Dan come on, give you the ban list, and then if you want to talk about it, you could put that in right after.
And we're going to use this offer to into in depth. It's going to one back, and
there was no reason
this is a tough one because this is not a card that is.
You literally made an Escape from Tartarus version of this card. There was absolutely no reason to make this card come back down to Tartarus. 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, yep, got to put it back. That's on you, Dan.
Necessarily too strong, but it's so incredibly format warping, and it's really taken us out of this whole really cool game plan sort of decks, because it is just splashable in so many different decks, and that is not ultimately what we're looking for out of the live stream format.
Now, we also talked about some bans being for design reasons. These next 2 bans, they're friends, and they're both banned for both power and design reasons, in that they just play in a way that's a little bit too easy to bypass the rules of Elestrals. That's Tad Puff and Tad Flow.
We already knew that.
We noticed, especially after...
So, they limited these to 1 before, didn't they? They were limited originally, or they were just outright banned. Tide Puff is great. It's a fun one to have. Obviously, I've played it in my water deck. My two main decks aren't going to be touched anymore, so whatever. But like, yeah, Tide Flow and in order special Tide Flow not the one to do. Yeah, I mean, sure, but like getting that, especially like getting that 2 cost on the field first turn if you have a Tad Puff in your hand, I can understand definitely because it makes it so much more difficult to like do anything, especially with the Lockagon. Like Tad Puff was going to get banned as soon as Lockagon came in. The new Lockagon came in. As soon as you got that, it was just going to make Lockagon one of the most unstoppable decks for the most part.
The first emergency ban in Livestream, where we got rid of Rise from the Ashes, among a couple others, that Water and Frost really started to dominate in many different ways, and the Tads were always there at the scene of every crime. So the Tads show up when you want to bypass the normal cast rules of Elestrals, and they don't require any setup. You just got to go get it. We think that this is
the difference between Tadflow is Tadflow you have to cast, and Tadpa if you don't, it like you already have it's
too limiting in gameplay, that it creates too much variance, it's too fast, and these elements have other ways.
The thing about Tadpass and Tadflow is I don't see a way really that you would want to bring them back from Escape from Tartarus. Like these guys are banned and you're not getting an Escape from Tartarus version, as you shouldn't.
To get down ones or ways to get into Ascensions into twos, but we need people to work a little harder on this.
Yeah, and obviously we initially came to these at 1, but we did find them to still be pretty warping at 1 after further testing. There's obviously other decks that have the ability to expedite that process to Ascension, but specifically speaking in Water and Frost rather, it's been challenging because it's really constrained design space in the future too. Tadpuff, I can speak to specifically, has been very problematic as we create new water-related 2 costs. It becomes very hard to balance those around the idea of Tadpuff because it becomes so easy to get these 2 costs out. And if you look at the spread of water 2 costs, there's actually so many that are viable. And Lockagon is the one that people are utilizing the most right now. But that lineup runs deep. It really does.
And there's also the whole Majesty. If you wanted to run a Majesty, like like Majesty lobby, just get Tadpuff on the field, get Globby on the field with Ascend in the Globby. If you happen to have a just get from Globby up to Majesty in 1 turn, absolutely just be devastating for your opponent. Same thing with the Lockagon. You get 1 Lockagon on the field, especially the Aphrodite one, you basically are going to destroy your opponent.
I think of like Capricorn Champion of Aphrodite. I think of Draking, obviously. And obviously there's new ones coming too. So I feel really good about this one. I think kind of removing the Saki one of in this case is going to be a benefit. And like we said, I think both of these elements have plenty of other things they can do in a similar vein to still achieve what they're trying to achieve. Aphoros being a great example, and Frostix being a great example for Frost. Those decks have ways to kind of get to the same thing, but a little slower and a little bit more, kind of thought out. And that I think is going to be the theme of this overall list, is as you start to digest all of the pieces, you're going to see Elestrals are going to slow down actually quite a bit and allow players more room to interact, give a little bit more of that back and forth, and that's something that I'm looking forward to. The next batch of cards, though, Ben, I'll let you take, and this is a big statement here, and I think it's one that the community, many will be very happy with, and of course some will not be happy with, just based on their favorite decks, but I think this is a necessary step for us.
It's time for Self-Mill to go. So we're going to ban a new card and an old card. We're going to ban Iwilly, Champion of Kyone, and Cedar Soar.
Good.
I'll also note Iwilly is a key target for a future Escape from Tartarus version. The card as made, it just does a little bit too much and doesn't have enough input cost. It happens multiple times. It gets multiple ones. Anyone that's faced down this card does not need an explanation as to why it's being hit. We did test this at a limit to 1.
They will literally ban everything else around Blitzstrings. Say, see, Blitzstrings isn't an issue, and yet we still they ban everything around Blitzstrix, but will not ban Blitzstrix. Dan is so bullheaded and stubborn to make sure that Blitzstrix stays at 3. Get that entire line off the field.
One, and we learned very quickly, more variance is not what self-mill needs to be a more fun gameplay experience.
Yes, for sure. I think the EFT version of iWilly makes a lot of sense, as you.
Like, and Dan was so hyped when he started like putting up more. He was like, every time he would talk about self mill, he was like, you could see the excitement in his voice and like just the way he talked about self mill. He wanted self mill like one of the ways to go.
Said it. We haven't tested it, to be honest, but there's a world where it's, it only works on cast, or there's a cost on that cast, or maybe it only works on special cast. Like there's a few different things that we can do that will drastically reduce the repeatability of it or remove it entirely and make it a more fair card in the future. This card is also challenging too. When I speak about kind of constricting future design space, I think this one was just a little bit of a miss on the balance side, if I'm being honest. So I think it'll be good to take it out back. Cedar Soar is an interesting one though, Ben. I know we're gonna have to explain that, as that card is a big brick in your hand generally.
So, and this is, I think, a great example of, I'm not going to call Cedar Soar silent because it's actually very loud when it impacts gameplay, but I think this is more about what we're looking to do philosophically and what we're looking to explore in terms of play patterns, in terms of how can we make the game more fun. Cedar Soar, people call it the brick whenever we talk about it, but it's a card that if you feel obligated to put in your deck with the purpose of raising the floor on your average self-mill. iWilly solved this by making every card a hit. Too good. Cedar Soar adds additional hits no matter what you're doing. It rewards a high density of self-mill cards, but it's always variant. Sometimes there are none, sometimes it's in your hand and you lose, sometimes you flip 2 and your opponent loses. But the player agency is really limited in terms of how much of a choice do I have outside of deck building, if that's what happens this game, outside of hitting mill into chain mill into chain mill. So Cedar Soar will mean if you still want to play the Blistrix line, we're leaving that fully intact. Snowlet at 3, Aspro at 3, Blistrix at 3. If you want to solve that puzzle, you can. But there is not going to be any get out of jail free card.
Once again, he's saying what I'm saying. They are going to make sure this, like, live stream, Sunstrike, Set 8, whatever. They are going to make sure that they will never ban. They are never going to ban Blistrix. They are always going to ban everything around it and say, well, you're going to have to solve Blistrix on its own, but we're going to take away everything else around it. It's ridiculous. Ban Blistrix. Come on.
Free 4/6s or 6/8 if you have Mountain of Boreas in play when you hit Cedar Soar in any volume. This is also about making sure that we don't end up accidentally giving Frost multiple ways to repeatedly ascend into giant 3-drops. We just want to make sure that it plays, I'm not going to call this an honest game, but that it commits to the game that it's playing. So we expect this will probably have a significant competitive impact on self-mill and Blistrix specifically, but we're leaving that Ascension line intact for people that want to explore it, and I bet it'll be a really fun casual Tuesday deck.
Yeah, I also think as I kind of dive into the library of cards that can support Blistrix, there's cards like Avalanche, there's cards like Borealis, which are really interesting. I think there's still a world where that deck can be interesting, but it's going to have to lean in a little bit differently, and it's not going to be able to go wide like it did. It's going to have to go tall, and you're going to have to commit to that, and I think that that'll actually be really fun for players who enjoy that.
So basically, you're banning Cedar Soar because you don't want to ban Blistrix. You're banning iWilly because you don't want to ban Blistrix. That's what they're telling you, is that we are going to make sure that if we screw up and Blistrix get way too good again, we're going to ban everything around it so Blistrix stays intact. It's garbage. It is absolutely a joke.
Without being unfun for the people on the other side of the table to the same extent that it currently is. And I also want to highlight that, the self-mill aspect of Frost is one that we're going to continue to build upon in the future.
Again, they're going to make more self-mill cards. Blistrix will be good for a bit, and then they're going to ban everything else around Blistrix or limit it to 1, so Blistrix stays intact because for some reason, Dan loves Blistrix.
But in a way that is more consistently driven, more, thematic. And I think it's ultimately going to, result in kind of a better experience for people. It is going to be a game plan-oriented self-mill strategy rather than I'm going to drop this card and I'm going to hope that I land the card I want. We're going to give you the tools that are going to help you send the cards you want to be able to formulate a game plan, to be able to execute something cool by the mid or late part of a game. And that's what we're really aiming to do with the self-mill strategy. So I look forward to that. And these hits definitely have future impact consideration as well. So that's also worth noting, and you'll kind of get the theme of that throughout this video. Is we're not only making decisions for today, but we're also thinking, not entirely, but certainly, in our thought of what does set 7 look like, what does set 8 look like, how can we set ourselves up for success with those sets as well. So
set 7.
We feel really good about that. Kind of moving along, I think we can kind of shift focus here. This next card that we're banning may be a surprise to some, but I think for many players that have kind of played in the top tables, I think this one is no surprise to you. But we're gonna take Tornajin, the genie, and put it, send it in Tartarus. We're gonna lock this thing away. We're gonna put the genie back in the bottle on this one, and I think this is one I feel very confident in terms of.
So why don't you just there's no point in Winjin. You might as well just ban Winjin too. There's no point in Winjin if you don't have Tornajin.
How we can approach reducing some of the power level of Solar specifically. Not that we want to target specific things, but this will allow us to reduce the power level of Solar and reduce kind of some of that early game frustration. I mean, this card is able to. We've seen it, players customizing cards in their deck just to have a guaranteed hit off of your Tornajin, and that can be very challenging for players to be able to come back against. We had kind of concluded from our testing that Solar really stood out in our testing without a Tornajin hit, and I think this card is a ticking time bomb for other decks as well. Just because as Foretell continues to extend, as more cards become titled variants.
With Sunstreak coming out, though, unless they have a champion, Winjin has no purpose right now in the game at all.
Winjin's frequency will only increase as players are able to forecast what's coming, and I feel really good about this one. And I'll also mention, I've been told not to leak it, but I will also mention we do have a new Tornajin coming in Sunstrike that is not nearly as busted. It's pretty good, but it's not nearly quite the same power level, and that'll allow it to still work alongside Winjin. So Winjin is going to be Ascension-less for some time here, but it will get a new titled champion card coming in the next set. That'll be a little bit closer in power level to, I think, what we're looking for.
Yeah, what players were identifying with this card is that both the immediate and sustained advantage, especially if it sticks, and it's much faster and it just swingy than many things that Solar otherwise does. Now, Solar actually wasn't really performing much in the last couple of formats ever since the Rise from the Ashes ban, but many players, especially those our top competitors, kept telling us it's going to come back, it's going to come back, it's right there. Just it's a very difficult deck to pilot. We did find that in testing, Winjin was the strongest genie left standing. And instead of doing a limit or ban to Winjin itself, which is able to get that Ascension, especially the one coming in the next set, we went for the power card itself so that we could make sure that the new target will slot right in seamlessly. These second order changes that are impacting decks that might have been behind the other bans might seem a little bit strange, but our dedicated playtest team put a lot of hours in and reported on the cards that felt like they were standing out after the rubble cleared. Tornajin was one, and Lavalith was another. Lavalith, it's a key one of right now, and is, I believe, I have to check my Evil the Duck data.
So they're just trying to get rid of fun. They're trying to make Elestrals as unfun as possible.
But I believe is our #1 most represented Elestral in premieres over the last couple events. It is definitely increased over the course of Livestream. Really strong card. Originally meant to flip boards and come from behind, but has ended up just being a really powerful tool. Especially oppressive against divine strategies.
Yeah, Lavalith is one that, I think when I look back on it, it conflicted entirely with game design. If I were to redo it, I'd probably just have it target face downs. I think that's a much better approach, and maybe there's a world where a Tartarus version comes for this card. But this is about divines for sure, right?
Or you could make a champion of Hephaestus. Just make a Lavalith champion of Hephaestus one that isn't busted and go from there.
We've talked at great length. I've communicated a desire for Divine Rune strategies to be a focus of the game, where the Divine champions block. There's a lot of really cool things that come from Divines being on the field, and it's not just that, though. I think we've kind of identified that, in Livestream, Lavalith is always online. Like, this card doesn't need your opponent to have a Divine, just the sheer amount of spirits that exist on a field at a given time. Lavalith is an incredibly blowout type of card, and our testing just concluded that the person who was sticking to Lavalith was generally winning, and that not ideal. And I know that this creates some frustrating play patterns for players because it's almost as if you can't play the game the way you want to play it, because if this one card shows up, then it completely derails you, and that I don't think is a good thing. Now, obviously, there's other ways to remove runes, right? When I think of Gloombat and P-Gust and other things like that, but they also don't come with a 6 body. So, it's a little bit different, I think, and I think that that'll be a very welcomed addition to the ban list for many players. Our next card, I think, is probably going to be the most shocking one. It's our final ban, but I actually feel really good about this, and I think this is going to show a very strong commitment from us to slow things down a little bit. And we're going to be banning Nectar of the Gods, surprisingly. I'll be real, I did not anticipate this to be a card that we would put on the Tartarus list at any point in the near future, but it creates such an
It is basically pot of greed, but it's paid pot of greed, and I'm not surprised at all. I'm surprised it took them this long. Obviously, I don't really think set 1 through 4 many people were using Nectar of the Gods. It wasn't I think that's the reason why it skidded away and didn't make it didn't get banned from set 1 to like the first year and a half, because not too many people were using it. But when we get to later games now, a lot more people have been using Nectar of the Gods in the last 6 months than they were when Elestrals first came out. Honestly, I didn't think I was one of the few people using Nectar of the Gods back when when the game first came out. You didn't really see it that often.
incredible advantage for players, and it allows these combo decks to speed things up so much so that the opponent doesn't even have a chance to respond, because it's generating so much draw advantage in every element for free, basically, because as we highlighted at the beginning of this, there's been less of a focus around spirits actually mattering when you're able to establish the sports state that's
Really surprised Drops Elite hasn't been hit, because that's basically that's a mulligan. That's a mulligan, and instead of the thing about Drops Elite, and I'm surprised it hasn't been hit, is that that's a mulligan anytime during the game, and not just at the beginning of the game.
unoutable or so repeatable. Nectar of the Gods enables that in a much faster way, and it makes it so you can almost forego a lot of the systems of the game just simply by drawing. And I recall, myself playing through games where my opponent goes Nog, and they draw into another Nog, and they're up in so much advantage at that point. It's enough to try to get through a back row in the first place, but when they have that much extra advantage in terms of cards, it becomes very difficult to even have a chance in a game like that. Not to mention, again, the ability to string together these pieces that can go so tall or so wide so fast, and then have all those extra cards to back them up. It just makes for what I think is an undesirable play experience. So what I'm really looking forward to with taking Nectar of the Gods out of the game is the fact that there will be more of this back and forth. Each of those cards is going to matter when you draw them. You're going to have to really be strategic about how you position your Elestrals and which runes you use and when, and how you can generate those advantages. You're not going to be able to lean so heavily on this card that's just thinning your deck and generating quick advantage. I also think that we'll see some other cards, some other draw cards that are Elestrals generally, see a little bit more play. I think that those cards will have a lot of opportunity to succeed, but those are interactable, right? Those cards have more interaction windows. Nectar of the Gods generally, nobody is running, Blessing? No, Intervention. And nobody's running Divine Intervention, right? To stop Nectar of the Gods. So this is a card that is just ultimately unchecked, and I think it'll be to the benefit of Elestrals to slow things down and just take it out of the game.
Yeah, talk about the one of the few cards that nobody is playing. No one's playing Divine Blessing. Like, there is literally no reason to play Divine Blessing.
Yeah, this is something that I noticed. I mean, I am with the team relatively recently. I started in the Firestorm era, and at first I thought when I started playing, oh, Nectar is the first card that should be in every deck. It's really, really strong. In the slower Firestorm meta, that wasn't always the case, but as Livestream has continued, we've seen that representation go up and up and up to the point where it feels like building a deck, you start with 37 cards, and then you fill it in. So it seems like the right call here to pull it back and to commit our longer-term plan of pulling back Omnis being in every deck.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, I Nectar of the Gods, like a bans, whatever, I figured it would probably happen, but like a limit of 1 I could also have seen, because it's you draw 2, you pay 2, and that's it, and you don't get it back unless, of course, you have a way to get it back, which why they probably banned it, is because there are ways to actually get the card back by certain means.
Not hitting all those today. Don't get too excited, but this is the last ban we have. Let's start to get into the limits.
We're going to talk about Morfrost first. This was a big piece of contention for us going into this last list where we chose to limit the bat form. After further investigation, further testing, further kind of community sentiment, we got that one wrong. There was a better approach for us, and our testing really revealed that in a super positive way. And I want to highlight that we did identify, based on Premier data alone, that Morfrost was the strongest performing deck in the game before our most recent list. So we knew we needed to do something. So ultimately, we're going to be shifting things up. We're going to be limiting Lycan form to 1 copy and releasing Bat. So Bat is back to 3.
Bat is the thing that when you play Morfrost, you want to do a bunch of Morfrost stuff. You want to do a lot of, like, you want to throw all the titles in your deck. You want to get that Indus form going. You want to get that Terraform going. But what we ended up seeing is with the Bat hit, it was the right thing to do to just run a small package of Morfrost and then throw whatever other Frost cards you want in whatever deck you were doing, or do the Willy thing, or do the Cryo line. We wanted to see what it would take to make sure that Morfrost was rewarded for doing Morfrost, as opposed to every other deck rewarded for being a Morfrost tourist and just swinging by just whenever they wanted a 5/2 or a Scorpion. And I'll note as well, we did test the Chimera limit. It was devastating. It was way too much. We just wanted to see what we could do to curb the deck as opposed to kill it. The Chimera limit might have been the most devastating of the 3. So we're moving to the Lycan hit. It feels like the right thing to do. In playtesting, it actually feels more relevant than I expected, even for pure Morfrost. Unless you would Kione, then you're not going to have that second Chimera, second Bat quite as often. And that means you're not going to have that board of 5/2s quite as often. So it felt impactful, it felt relevant, but we still expect Morfrost players to be pretty happy with what they can do here.
I know, I'm excited. Like, I want to brush off my Morfrost Terraforms, like, real quick with some Mountains of Boreas. Like, that is on my list to build pretty much right away. This next hit is one that we spent a lot of time talking about, and we are going to be limiting Cryo Vern to 1 copy. And this is a multifaceted hit here. This card is basically...
Obviously, a lot of people don't do the Cryo Scorch thing. It's like usually they put Cryolings, Cryoverns in their deck, and that's what they go with. It's very rare that you would see somebody actually come out with Cryo Scorch because it is so hard to get up and to keep up. But if you can keep it, if you can get it up, it pretty much just wins you the game most of the time. But that's very, very rare. So Cryovern's very interesting. Cryoling, I would have been seen as a limit more than Cryovern, because that's the one that gets you to Cryovern very fast.
A free 7. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Any point mid to late game, it's very easy in Frost to kind of game your spirits in a way to be advantageous. But your Cryoling hits the field and it immediately turns into a Cryovern, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it becomes a compounding effect alongside a lot of the other Frost tools, even when you remove the Willies of the world. When we look at Morfrost, we look at the Cryo Rhino decks with Rhinosect, this card just becomes so repeatable. And we would see players go, Cryoling, Ascend, and Frostix, Cryoling, Ascend. Now you're staring down 2 Cryoverns, often misenchanted, that can be such a mountain to climb for players. So we did a lot of testing here. We looked at what it looks like to have a Cryoling at 1. We looked at what it looks like to have a Cryovern at 1. And we felt that the Vern hit was actually the superior hit here for the game, because, again, it reduces that play pattern of the repeatability of Vern. And it also creates this really interesting dynamic where if you want to lean into Cryoling, 1, you're only going to be able to do it once. It's a card that you generally don't want to see on your opening hand, and it's a card you don't really want to see in the late game if you've already used your Cryovern. So I think that's going to create some really interesting gameplay. I think this is also a hit to kind of some of the stuff that's been around for a long time too. I think that's another piece of this, right? This is a strategy that's been around since Frostfall, and it's kind of homogenized a lot of Frost decks. So we're going to reduce the frequency of that, and I think it'll actually be really nice for Frost to be able to open up some of that deck space and look at some other really cool.
The thing about it is, no one's doing the Imperawatt line. That doesn't even matter, because you're not going to use Penguatt for anything. It's either Morfrost or Cryovern. That's about the only things, and of course Blistrix. Those are the 3 things, like Morfrost, Cryovern, or Blistrix. Those are your 3 options. So there's really not much else you would really do with Frost.
Cards in the element that can benefit their game plans in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and I want to take a second here as well, because we have hit a lot of Frost cards. Now, this is the last Frost card that we're hitting today, but I want to talk to it specifically Do we hate Frost? No, of course we don't.
I like Frost.
So,
Of course you don't, because you keep Blistrix around and be like, we're just gonna ban everything around it, and you go, okay, you have to figure out Blistrix. It's ridiculous.
same. I think it's cool. You get it.
Terrible.
You get it.
I get
I'll
it.
explain
Yeah,
later.
we're here.
Anyways, yes. So, when you look at an emergency ban list, and you put Like a Void and Cryovern next to each other, those are not the same level of emergency here. I don't even know if we call the Cryos emergency or not. But we have a mission to make sure that we inject some life into the live stream format, some novel diversity, some...
It feels like the emergency in this was that they realized they screwed up on bringing out Like a Void. They screwed up on Bat, and the Tadpuff, Tadflow, they were like, well, yeah, we might as well just ban these outright. So that's basically what it comes down to, is that anything else they did on here it was like anything else they missed and didn't calculate on the last ban list, so we're just going to throw them in here anyway. Whereas Like a Void, Pads, and what else was it? Yeah, the Cryovern's like one of those is that, yeah, we could have put it on the last list, but it just skipped by. We're going to put it on this time.
interesting developments, and to make sure that it's not just the same stuff. Because what we find when we do a list is that players are excited to brew and change stuff. It would be bad for us and bad for you if what we did instead was kill all the new cool stuff and you go back to whatever the old stuff is. The Cryo Frost line is...
Honestly, when it comes to a ban and limit list, I think that you should have to go through, like, anything from live stream should have to be, like, unless it's a very, very bad card that is broken from the start, should be, like, not hit at all until we get the Sunstrike. Just my thoughts.
The Cryo Scorch line is really cool. And someday someone's going to find that stellar. Someday someone's going
It's going to happen.
I bet it's in Dan's house. It's in Dan's house right now somewhere.
We're going to find
sure
it on Friday.
It's cool. It's fun. It's also been around for a long time and has been a part of Frostex. Whenever you're not sure what to throw in, you just throw in those 6 and then probably the Lavalith because you're here already. We want to disrupt that paradigm. We still expect to see some Cryoverns, some Cryo Scorches even. We still expect to see some Cryolings. But this is to make sure that the best thing to do isn't just what we've already been doing. And also, if you look real closely, Cryoling is just Elachick in a trench coat. It's just a 7
Not really.
that you get out there without having to work quite as hard at it. It's a little bit too much. It's a little bit too efficient. It's not on the same level as the cards that we're banning, which is why we're not banning it. We still want people to be able to do this, but you get one bite at the apple, and then you get an opportunity to explore new stuff. When we look at the frost hits, most of them are pretty concentrated. Self-mill is really in the crosshairs here. Then we have the more frost nudge, and we have this one hit to Cryovern to streamline this package to make sure it is not game-defining in every frost deck that you see. Otherwise, we're really excited for players to explore frost, and we bet that they will find plenty of things to do.
Chivroar enjoyers, rise up.
Nobody
Shifting
likes
gears,
Chivroar.
let's talk water. We obviously took Tadpuff out to Tartarus, and we're going to lock him away. And this next hit is one that I think a lot of people won't be surprised about, and that is limiting Frostfall Locagon to one copy. The Aphrodite Locagon deck is one that I think gives me great excitement and optimism for the future of Elestrals, in the sense that, you know, we have this really concise game plan deck that is able to execute.
So instead of having up to 6 Locagons, you only have 4 now. That's the thing. I think both of them should really be. I think the other one should be semi-limited to 2. This one, the most you can have is 3. Because it does get absolutely ridiculous with Aphrodite.
On the thing that it wants to do, does it with a level of power that can be really fun for players to pilot. But I think the challenge here is the repeatability of it and the freeness of it in a lot of ways. Tadpuff expedited the process significantly, but just taking Tadpuff out doesn't feel like quite enough to reduce the power of this strategy. We recognize that Aphros, Magnaros, those cards are very strong. They're going to remain strong. And I think the top end of Locagon being this turbo strategy of getting out 2 very powerful 2 costs that synergize perfectly well with each other is one that I think is great all in all. But again, it's the repeatability of it. So our conclusion here was to reduce that by removing, you know, Locagon, the Frostfall one, to just 1 copy, ensuring that you're going to have to utilize your Aphrodite or your Foamy to find it, but then you're not going to be able to do it again. Once that card is outed, which is a much easier card to out, right? Dense Fog, Gorgon's Gaze, the suppression side of that card opens up some weaknesses for it. Once you have that card, you're not going to have to deal with that combo again, and it's going to allow you a chance to come back in the game. Now, I think it's important to recognize there's one particular card that enables this combo to come back, and that is Aphrodite's Soulmates. But we feel that that is a cool thing. That is a cool thing to do. You're going to have to slot that card in, which can sometimes be a dead card. It can sometimes be a really cool card to interact with. It's a different approach for players, and it's going to reduce that pain that players feel with Lockagon hitting the field, going down, and then another one just coming out on the next turn because of the repeatability of it. This is a hit that I feel really, really good about. I do still anticipate the Aphrodite Lockagon deck to be a very strong meta contender.
And unless you limit the other ones, which you're probably not going to, yes, you have 4. You can still have 4 Lockagons in your deck. 3 titled ones and 1 normal lock. It's still going to be powerful. Until you get that limited to where you can only have 1 of each, it's still going to be a crazy strategy.
But I think this will open up other decks to have a chance to be able to compete with it in a more compelling way.
AKA, we're tired of seeing Aphrodite being one of the top decks.
And we've slowed down the speed at which this strategy can be executed, and we've ensured that the only way to repeat it is to use another card that I think is pretty flavorfully cool. So I'm very excited about the Lockagon hit here.
All right, let's talk about Solar Burst. Our next one
I'm not
here.
surprised about this one at all.
This is, I don't think we need to explain this too much to anyone that's played against.
I'm really not surprised. This is one of the I could see this and what is it? The Champion of Apollo card that I can't think of off the top of my head. That the one Champion of Apollo card I can't think of. That one should be limited because it's busted.
It's hyper efficient removal. It is able to get rid of pretty much anything on the field. Yeah. Works really well with solar synergy and doesn't target. It does a little bit too much for everything. However, solar having good removal and good removal in general is not a problem. It's a problem when it compounds in multiples and you can't keep anything on the board. You want people to work a little bit harder for it. You can still hit the one of. This aligns it with efficient removal cards like Resting on Your Laurels and Earthquake that have also performed at 1. And we find that solar decks, without Solar Burst being a prominent thing, and without the play of using your Solar Burst to set up your Windjin into Tornadin, that we find the experience to be a little bit more even, and it's a little bit more possible to stick things on the board. Solar still has its power, but at 3, this card felt pretty impressive and kind of sucked the wind out of the sails of anyone playing Elestrals against it.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, looking back at Solar Burst, I think this signifies a really good direction for Elestrals in finding flavorful ways to approach removal for various elements. I think there's a few pieces of this that if I were to rewrite the script, I'd probably do a little bit differently now. I'd probably reduce the foretell length, like the depth at which you foretell, and we would probably cost it a little higher, right? I think that those, and maybe make it targeting. I think those are some good lessons for us, but I think it shows that, this is the direction that we're aiming to go, is looking at how can we create unique in elemental removal that isn't ubiquitously splashable. That's a really big pillar for us. And as new sets and new cards come out, I think you'll see a lot more of that. And I think it'll be...
It does really feel like Dan really wants Elestrals to be that you're going to be playing mostly mono deck. That's what he wants. Like, he wants these decks to be catered to. If you want to play Solar, you do nothing, like mostly Solar. You play Lunar, you play with mostly Lunar. He doesn't want to have cards like a Solar Burst get put in any deck, just splash it around there. That's why eventually, not now, but say a year or so from now, don't be surprised if all the Omni lists, the Omni ruins get banned or limited.
Very well welcomed. I think right now Solar Burst at 1 makes a lot of sense in the game, and I think it'll help balance things out quite a bit. I think Solar has so many tools that I can utilize to remove things as well and go tall. I honestly don't think they're going to miss it too much, to be honest. I think it's going to be a really welcomed balancing change. The next card, I think, is one that we will see people dancing in the streets over. Let's talk about Eruption, Ben.
Let's talk about Eruption, everyone's fan favorite. So, my job and the reason why I'm here is because I'm the community director and here to absorb player feedback and help filter it and use it to drive our decisions. I do not know if we've gotten more player feedback about any card than Eruption. Maybe like a Void, I don't know. Eruption's a lot. Now, Eruption is not the same kind of power outlier as like a Void, but in terms of play experience, it's pretty polarized.
I mean, if you somehow, some way are able to draw 3 eruptions and play them all at the same time, that's 9. Especially if opponent has nothing on the side of their side of the field that's fire enchanted, that's 9 spirits. You toss a Toxionn on, that's half their deck, half their spirit deck in 1 turn. Now, as somebody who's done that once or twice, if you don't have a way to get spirits back, and your opponent has something with anything on you, you're going to be in trouble, because that's still, you're using 6 spirits and costing them 9, or 9 to 10, depending on if you have a way to cost them a spirit in that same turn. That's a lot of damage, and it's especially somebody who's played fire a heck of a lot. Eruption is great at 3. It's great, but it can burn through, and it does have that effect that if you were to go triple eruption on somebody early game, you're screwing yourself. But it's also something that, like, if you do it late game, I've done that. I've had that happen 1 time, able to triple eruption 1 time late game to win a game, and it feels great. Obviously, opponent's not going to like it when they're losing 9 spirits at the end of the game, when the game probably is tight. Say maybe you have 8 spirits, they have 9 spirits, and you're able to hit that triple eruption to take all of their spirits away. Let's say you both have 8 spirits each, and you're able to triple eruption them, and they can't do nothing about it. They lost because of it. I can see why they limit this. I'm surprised they didn't outright ban it, because I like eruption. Summon limit would be great too, but that's still another 6 spirits.
Especially in multiples. I'm not sure if 1 eruption by itself is the thing that people are concerned about. It is the concentration of burn spells, especially in the Krakatuga burn decks that have come around in Livestream, where...
Yeah, Krakatuga is definitely one of... Yeah, like... I think it's Krakatuga, or is it Moltuga? It's one of those two. That you're just going to be able to rotate and get this thing back. And so it's not going to make that much of it. So, yeah, getting it to 1, it makes sense. That pretty much invalidates this deck completely. I'm not going to go around and just pull out all the cards that they're getting rid of. Still, this will be just a time capsule of set 1 through 4, and that's all it's going to be.
You have the new Champ Smoltuga that can go search for the eruption, get the Krakatuga. You can take 6, 9, 12 damage all in 1 turn. It ends up being a pretty significant hit that comes out of nowhere quite often. We want to look at a different direction for this. We do like Smoltuga searching up 1 eruption, of it being a search target. We do like the idea of being able to do that, and the Smoltuga deck in our testing has pivoted to taking a bit of a different direction, where eruption can be searched up to be that last final push, along with maybe a Krakatuga activation, but it does not define the entire game, and you aren't getting asked what's your spirit count on turn 2. Maybe you are, but it probably isn't because you're dead. In addition, Dan, there's something else you'd like to share a little bit about, even though you're not going to leak a full card.
I keep getting told I can't do it. Listen, coming in set 7, there is a titled eruption card coming, so my Krakatuga enjoyers like myself can rest easy knowing that there's going to be a cool way to explore this.
So they're going to have a titled eruption, which means you have 4 eruptions. Obviously, this one will make use of cost 3. I'm sure a titled eruption will be like something completely different. It won't even cost you spirits. It'll be totally different. Maybe it's or something on the field or something. I don't know.
Strategy that is not burn focused, and I think that that's going to be really neat. And I'll say that this new titled eruption is it's one of my most favorite, most creative, most flavorful cards in the set. I think players are really going to enjoy it because it opens up a slightly different path for gameplay. And you'll see, Ben kind of touched on it briefly, that we saw in testing that these Krakatuga players
get annoyed because we have those Kickstarter cards coming next year. Like not next year, but this year for the Elestrals. Awaken and Eruption is one of the cards that you got, and now like you can only use one of them if you don't have any.
We're starting to look into more of some of the stuff that Hephaestus does, which I think is welcome, leaning a little bit more into the fire artifact side of things, as opposed to relying solely on just trying to drop 2 eruptions in a late game scenario to catch your opponent off guard. So I think this is going to be ultimately a really big win there. So non-titled eruption coming. I can't wait to reveal it. I'm not going to do it right now, but it'll be something that I think a lot of people will enjoy. The last thing we're going to touch on in terms of limits to 1, just super clear, race to the top, unlimited, just going to throw that out there. We don't have to spend a lot of time there. We felt that doesn't need a lot of explanation. But we
Because
are
it's not
going to
unlimited.
put Kinleo and Equal Links back to 1.
And
And I apologize for the whiplash on this, but as we started to explore this format, we started to make these changes.
surprising.
There's a level of like, okay, we're trying to do so many things at one time. It's really hard for us to centralize how this feedback works. And I think we probably jumped the gun a little too much. It's always been the second Kinleo that gets you. We're talking about how we want to enable divine runes, and we want to enable these strategies, and then we tilt the scales back to Equal Links at 3. And while I don't necessarily think that this is a card that like can exist at 3, like I definitely think Equal Links can exist at 3, but it's one of those things that like if Equal Links is at 3 and Earth is a deck that is viable, which I think it very much so will be, players are not going to run Hermes. Players are not going to run Zeus. Players are not going to run so many of these different strategies because just the fear of running into that 1 or 2 times throughout an 8-round tournament makes it so that deck is invalidated entirely. Like you just can't do that. You can't go into the tournament with Hermes when Equal Links is at 3 and say, yeah, I'm going to run my super cool Hermes tech deck that takes a lot of skill level and all this other stuff. Because if you just run into Equal Links at any point and they drop that combo on you,
might as well just ban Equal Links and give an escape from Tartarus. No, we didn't. Same thing with Kinleo. Just ban them and give them a escape from.
you probably just lose, and that's not worth the gamble for a player. So I think that these are very appropriate places for them to be right now. They're both searchable by strong cards. You know, Rummagem, Hopperoo gives you a little bit of length into your deck. You've got cards like Small Tuga to search out the Kinleo. Fire has proven itself to be a really strong contender with Hestia right now. So I actually don't think those decks are going to miss it too much. I think the changes across the board are going to make these two staying at 1 make even more sense, in my opinion. And I think they're going to be, we're going to be in a really great spot with these cards sticking kind of where they were before.
Yeah, the idea of at Worlds not seeing anyone bring cool Divine decks because they're worried about running into Earth, it just felt too sad because the Divines are really fun cards and we want to see them, especially on stream. Okay, we're done with our limits. We're done with our bans. We have one more semi-limit here. This is a weird one. It's a little strange. It's more about sending a message. It does have a little gameplay impact. But why don't you tell us about why we are semi-limiting Ambrosia?
Yeah, so Ambrosia is our...
I'm telling you, I'm told you already. They're going eventually. This is the start of what they're going to do by the end of next year. The end of this year, I'm pretty sure Ambrosia will be banned. Wiggins Gaze will be banned. Any Omni Ruin is going to be banned. Dan does not want to have it be. You can just splash any card into any deck. He wants to get this to be where you're using most decks are mono decks, plain and simple.
Only semi-limit for this list.
This is ridiculous.
And I understand that this is a surprise, and we can recognize right now that the average player is running 2 Ambrosias. A lot of decks are not running 3 Ambrosias anymore, if any at all, really. Only very specific decks. Some decks are cutting it entirely, right? So this is a card that, again, may seem a little strange, but what we're doing with this limit is a few things, right? There's multiple pieces of this. One, this is us taking a step towards us tackling the Omni Suite. We're looking at the Invokes right now, but this is a step towards that. As we remove Nectar of the Gods and we look at these game plan decks still being effective, but the speed at which they execute and the consistency at which they execute being reduced, cards like Ambrosia start to become more impactful, because the more of those you see, especially in a tight late game scenario where both players are digging for resources, it can be pretty game determinative in those moments.
Oh, I don't know. Being able to make sure you have the spirits you need to be able to hopefully come back and win if you're in that scenario isn't a bad thing. This is ridiculous. This is an excuse. He's going to eventually get rid of Ambrosia will eventually be banned, as long as everything else.
And I also think there's a note here about, you know, this is a very soft hit to Lakugan, right, by reducing some frequency there. But I think the main pillar of this is to reduce some of that Elestral spirit color splashing and kind of the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to run 5 or 6 different elements, and it doesn't matter if I use that spirit because I'll just be able to Ambrosia it back. We found in testing that that one extra Ambrosia makes a big difference, and with us removing a lot of these other cards, Nectar of the Gods and some of these powerful runes like the Solar Burst and so on and so forth, there would be a tendency to just fill that last slot back with Ambrosia again, because we're slowing down the game a good bit. So we're going to kind of confine that in a way and say you can only run 2 of these cards right now. And we think that that's going to further help with the game plan decks.
It won't.
It's going to further steer us away from the good stuff piles that are just running a bunch of different elements so widespread on that, because it's gonna inhibit the ability to do that consistently without having effectless Elestrals or cards. And again, this is a step towards us looking at some of these Omni cards and leaning a little bit more into what makes each element that element, and I think that that's going to be a really positive one.
If you need confirmation that we are trying to stick with game plans and moving away from good stuff piles where you can just run whatever spirits you want, here it is. So we are making it's one small step for Ambrosia, but one giant leap for Elestrals. Yeah. We're looking to make sure that we send a message. Okay, we have a couple unlimits here. Let's get through this because you said this video was going to be 30 minutes, and I thought that was very funny at the time. We're not going to hit that.
Yeah, we're going to move a little quicker here. All right, we'll just dive into it. Unlimits, we talked about Bat Form already. That's an easy one. Race to the Top coming off the list. I think that's going to be great for Thunder decks to have that tool. It requires some additional setup. This next card that we're going to unlimit is Viscerus. Viscerus has been restricted at 2. We see other decks doing what Viscerus is already doing, right? We see Aetheros, the fish, we see Morfrost. There's a few different decks that are already doing what Viscerus is doing, so we feel like this is an appropriate time for this guy to come off. He's going to be a strong card, obviously. It's going to allow those Earth decks another tool to be able to get at a second guy, but he goes into defense. He's going to require some setup with Madness if you want to get him into attack position in battle phase to get that more snowballing nature. But what Viscerus is doing is very much so aligned with what a lot of other elements can do. So we felt this was a pretty appropriate time to allow him to come back to 3 and allow players to explore Viscerus at 3 copies again.
Okay, so that is change number 18 that we have covered. 18 changes. That is the complete.
This is everything we have now. Semi-limited is now just Ambrosia, which is like that, and losing Nectar of the Gods is them just saying by the time we get to next year, if Dan has his way, every single Omni Rune will be in Resident of Tartarus and be banned, as he definitely wants it to. Like the splashability cards to be
complete list. There's one thing that we're not doing, Dan, and we're not touching any counter runes. Every card today is either an Elestral or an Invoke. So, why is that? Well, we're changing everything else. We got to leave something the same. And we want to see exactly how all of the counter runes that are being played right now perform in a format where the window for interaction is way larger. A lot of these counter runes feel really sharp right now because the game is balanced on a knife's edge.
I'm just going to cut it off there. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. They need to ban Blistrix, and they're doing everything they can to get around that, and they're going to continue. And he made it very, quite clear that they're going to make sure by every fiber of their being that they can keep Blistrix at 3, along with its entire line, from now until it gets to a point where they have to ban it. If that day comes, I would be happy, but I'm not sure they're ever going to let that happen. Dan and his team are going to make sure that Blistrix can't get banned. And again, Ambrosia being put to 2, Nectar of the Gods being put into Tartarus is just them getting so close to 2. All the Omni Runes are eventually going to be banned. That's all there is to it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button, comment down below, like or dislike this video, and I'll see you guys for the next one.